She wasn't supposed to see him bleed. One wrong turned down a hallway that didn't exist on any map, and Destiny walked straight into the one secret that could get her killed, the untouchable heir of the CO Empire, on his knees, gasping, trusting no one, except her. In that instant, something ancient and starving woke up inside CO Junwoo, and it would not go back to sleep. He had buried 100 men and felt nothing. Then a stranger with quiet eyes pressed her hand against his wound and told him to breathe, and Junwoo, heir to the most feared name in the underworld, felt his empire crack open for the first time in his life. Everyone wanted CO Junwoo. The new girl didn't even look at him twice, until the night she found him dying in a stairwell, and he decided, in that single bleeding breath, that she would belong to him or no one would. There was a rule in the CO family: never let anyone see you weak. Destiny broke that rule without even knowing his name, and by morning, the most dangerous man in the city had already decided she was his. The blood on his hands was warm. Destiny's hands, pressed over his wound, were warmer. Somewhere above them, a party thrummed on, oblivious, glittering, cruel in its ignorance. CO Junwoo looked up at the stranger keeping him alive and felt something inside his chest, something he had trained for 26 years to kill, open its eyes. Welcome to Afro-Korea TV. Please like, share, and subscribe. Destiny hadn't wanted to come to the gala. She'd wanted a quiet Friday, a bowl of noodles, her sketchbook. Instead, her cousin Ariam had begged her into a borrowed dress and dragged her to the CO Foundation's charity auction, promising it would be just 2 hours, I swear. 2 hours became a lifetime the moment she took a wrong turn looking for a bathroom and found a service stairwell instead, and a man slumped against the wall, one hand pressed to his side, dark liquid seeping between his fingers. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She dropped to her knees on the cold concrete and pressed her own hands over his, hard, the way she'd learned in a first aid class 3 years ago and never thought she'd use. "Don't move," she said. "Don't you dare die on me in a stairwell. I don't even know your name." His breath came out in something that might have been a laugh, if laughing didn't hurt so much.
"Junwoo," he managed.
"And you are?" "Busy," she said. "Keeping you alive. Talk later." He watched her face instead of the ceiling. Steady hands. Steady eyes. No fear of him. No recognition of the name that made grown men flinch, because she didn't know it yet, and for one suspended minute in a stairwell that smelled like antiseptic and adrenaline, Junwoo let himself exist as just a man bleeding in front of a woman who refused to let him go. His security found them 4 minutes later. By then, something in him had already rearranged itself around her. The next day, Destiny started her new job at CO Innovations as a junior graphic designer, 3 floors below the executive suite, blissfully unaware that the man from the stairwell owned the building, the company, and, according to whispered rumor in the break room, a significant portion of the city's underworld besides. She found out when he stepped into the elevator on floor 12, dressed in a suit that fit like a warning, and every single person in the car went silent and lowered their eyes. Destiny did not lower her eyes. She recognized him first by the faint white line of a fresh bandage visible at his collar, and second by the way his gaze found her immediately, like he'd been waiting for the doors to open on exactly this floor. "You're alive," she said, before she could stop herself. The elevator held its breath. Junwoo's mouth curved, small and dangerous. "Barely. I believe I owe you something." "You don't owe me anything." Anyone would have helped. "No," he said quietly, stepping past her toward the doors as they opened on his floor.
"They wouldn't have."
He didn't look back, but something in her chest had already started keeping time with something in his. Word moved fast in the CO Innovations building, faster than any official memo. By the end of the week, everyone knew the boss had been asking about the new girl in design. Everyone assumed it was because someone had made a mistake. Nobody imagined the truth, that CO Junwoo, heir to an empire built on fear, had spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about a woman who called him busy and pressed her hands over his wound like his life was worth saving. He had women throwing themselves at him constantly, daughters of business partners, actresses, women who wanted his name more than they wanted him. Destiny wanted nothing. She hadn't even asked what he did. That more than anything undid him. He started finding reasons to pass her floor. Miss Destiny. His assistant's voice cut through the quiet hum of the design floor on a rainy Tuesday. Mr. CO would like to see you. Destiny's coworkers went very, very still. Someone dropped a stapler. She found him at the window of his office. City lights blurred silver through the rain. He didn't turn around immediately. I wanted to thank you properly, he said. That night. You already said thank you. In the elevator. I lied. I hadn't finished. She crossed her arms, unimpressed by the office, the view, the obvious weight of his name pressing down on the room. Is this the part where you offer me money to forget it happened? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe respect. Is that what you think of me? I don't think anything of you. I don't know you. Good, he said, finally turning, and his eyes were dark and unreadable and entirely too focused on her. Then there's nothing to unlearn. She left without accepting whatever it was he'd been about to offer. He watched the door close and felt, for the first time in years, genuinely delighted by refusal. The following week, small things began to happen. A coffee, her exact order, appearing at her desk with no note. A parking space near the entrance suddenly reserved under her name. When her ancient laptop finally died mid-project, a brand new one appeared on her desk by morning, no explanation offered or accepted. I didn't ask for this, she told him, marching into his office without an appointment, laptop box under her arm like evidence. I know. He didn't even look up from his paperwork, infuriatingly calm. I don't wait to be asked. That's not sweet. That's controlling. Call it what you like. Now he looked up, and the intensity in his gaze made her chest go tight. I take care of what matters to me. I don't belong to you, Junwoo. Not yet, he said, and the words landed soft and certain, like a promise instead of a threat. She should have been furious. She should have walked out. Instead, she stood there a moment too long, feeling the pull of him like gravity, before she made herself leave. By the end of the month, the whispers had turned to certainty. Everyone at CO Innovations wanted CO Junwoo. The heirs of rival companies angled for his attention at every event. Socialites left their numbers with his driver. His own board members' daughters were paraded in front of him at every family dinner. He was polite to all of them and warm to none. Destiny watched it happen at the company's autumn dinner, seated 3 tables away, in a dress Ariam had once again forced on her. She watched a beautiful woman in red lean into his space, laughing at something he clearly hadn't found funny, her manicured hand resting on his arm like she had every right to it. Destiny told herself she didn't care. She told herself twice. Junwoo's eyes found her across the room before the woman in red had even finished her sentence. He didn't smile. He looked at Destiny like the rest of the room had gone dark, and she was the only thing still lit. He excused himself within 30 seconds. You didn't have to do that, Destiny said when he appeared at her table, dismissing his own dinner companions with a single unreadable phrase. Do what? Leave her standing there. I wasn't looking at her, he said simply. I was looking for you. A beat. I don't like when other people touch what's mine. I'm not yours. You keep saying that. His jaw tightened, something jealous and possessive flashing hot behind his calm. I'm starting to think you say it because you're afraid it's already true. She had no answer for that. Neither did he need one. The way she hadn't pulled away when his hand found the small of her back said more than words could. A storm rolled through the city 2 weeks later, the kind that flooded intersections and knocked out power in half the downtown grid. Destiny was still at the office when the lights failed, alone on her floor, the building emptied out hours ago. Junwoo found her by flashlight, halfway down a stairwell that felt too much like the one where they'd started. You should have gone home, he said, voice rough with something like fear he'd never admit to. I was finishing a project. You could have been hurt. Alone. In the dark. He said it like an accusation, like her safety was a personal offense against him. Do you understand what this city is like when the lights go out? What kind of men come looking for exactly this? I didn't think. No, he cut in, and the raw edge in his voice startled her. You didn't think because you don't know what I am, what my name protects you from, and what it makes you a target for. Then tell me, she said quietly. Tell me what you are. He looked at her for a long moment in the flashlight's thin gold light, the storm howling somewhere far above them, and something in him finally broke open. I run things men are afraid to name, he said. My family built an empire in the dark, and I am its heir whether I wanted it or not. People fear me because they should. I have done things. He stopped himself. I am not a good man, Destiny. But I would burn down everything I've built before I let it touch you. She didn't run. That was the thing about her he would never stop marveling at. She stood in a dead stairwell with a confessed Mafia air and didn't run. Why me? She whispered. Because you looked at a dying man and saw a person worth saving, he said. Not a name. Not power.
Me.
His hand rose, hesitant for the first time in his adult life, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I don't know how to want something the way I want you. I've never had to. The flashlight trembled between them. The storm outside faded to nothing. When his mouth finally found hers, it wasn't gentle. It was starving, careful, and utterly certain, the culmination of weeks of restraint finally giving way. She kissed him back like she'd been waiting just as long. Seo Junwoo learns exactly what he's willing to burn down to keep her. By morning, the storm had passed, but nothing between them had gone back to how it was. Destiny woke on the couch in Junwoo's penthouse, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like him, the city glittering wet and gold through floor-to-ceiling windows. He was already awake, watching her from across the room like he was afraid she'd disappear if he blinked. You stayed, he said. You didn't exactly let me leave. I would have, he said. If you'd ask. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Last night you told me things you shouldn't have told anyone. Why me? Because for the first time in my life, he said, crossing the room to kneel in front of her, I wanted someone to know the truth and choose to stay anyway. She reached out and touched the healing wound at his side, the one that had started all of this. I chose the man in the stairwell, not the Empire. They're the same man. I know, she whispered. I'm choosing anyway. A few days later, word reached the Seo family that the heir had been seen repeatedly with a woman outside the family's usual circles, a nobody, an outsider, unconnected to any of the alliances his father had spent decades building. Junwoo's older cousin, Taemin, a man with ambitions of his own and a long-simmering resentment of Junwoo's position, saw an opportunity in it. She's a liability, Taemin said flatly at a family dinner Destiny wasn't invited to. No connections, no protection, no leverage for the family. If our enemies find out what she means to you, she becomes a target instead of an asset. She's not a chess piece, Junwoo said, cold enough that the room went quiet. Everyone is a chess piece, Taemin replied. You just haven't decided whose side she's playing for yet. The threat wasn't spoken aloud.
It didn't need to be.
That evening, Junwoo turned up at Destiny's apartment unannounced, tension coiled tight in his shoulders, something dangerous simmering just beneath his composure. She opened the door and knew immediately something had shifted. What happened? My family knows about you, he said. And in my world, that's not a small thing. Are you ashamed of me? God, no. He stepped closer, cupping her face like she was something breakable and precious both. I'm terrified for you. There is a difference. The fear in his voice cracked something open in her, a rawness she hadn't let herself feel yet. Then let me in, she said. All the way in. Stop trying to protect me from the truth of who you are. If I let you all the way in, he said quietly, I won't know how to let you go. Ever. Then don't. The space between them collapsed. What followed was not spoken of in detail, only felt in the way the city lights blurred outside the window, in the trembling breath between them, in hands that had learned entire histories of tenderness that violence had never taught him before. It was slow, and it was consuming, and when it was over, Destiny lay in the dark with her head against his chest, listening to a heartbeat that had finally, for one night, stopped racing toward danger and simply beat for her. She left before he woke. It wasn't cowardice, not exactly. It was fear, old and familiar, whispering that a man like him didn't keep women like her, that the morning would bring regret, that she was a stairwell mistake he'd eventually be talked out of by men like Taemin. So she gathered her things in the pale gray hour before dawn and slipped out, leaving nothing behind but an unmade bed and a note she didn't have the courage to write. Junwoo woke to an empty penthouse and understood, in an instant, exactly what kind of damage his silence the night before had done. He didn't call. He went looking. He tore through the city with a desperation his empire had never seen from him, texted her 100 times, sent security to every place she might have gone, showed up at her apartment, her favorite noodle shop, the design floor of his own company, each time met with the same aching absence. By the following morning, he found her at the small park near her childhood neighborhood, sitting alone on a bench, arms wrapped around herself. "You ran," he said, breathless, like he'd sprinted the whole way. I panicked. "Why?" "Because I know how this story goes, Junwoo." Her voice cracked. "Men like you don't keep women like me. Not really. Not once the family gets involved, not once the danger gets real." I didn't want to wait around to find out I was right. He dropped to his knees in front of the bench, taking her hands the way she had once taken his in a stairwell full of blood. "I have buried men who crossed me without a second thought," he said, low and fierce. "I have built an empire out of fear because it was the only language anyone ever taught me. And in 26 years, I have never once been afraid of losing something the way I was afraid this morning, when I woke up and you were gone." "Junwoo, I'm not letting you go," he said. "Not to my family, not to your fear, not to anyone. You don't get to disappear on me because you've decided in advance that I'll leave. I won't. I choose you every single morning, starting with this one." She was crying now, and so, quietly, was he, a man who had never let anyone see him breaking anyway, in a public park, for her. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. I'm here." He kissed her like a vow. The danger came 3 days later, exactly as Taemin had implied it would. A rival syndicate, sensing weakness in the CO family's fractured succession, saw an opportunity to strike where it would hurt most, not at Junwoo directly, but at the one person he had shown the world he couldn't afford to lose. Destiny was taken from the parking garage of CO Innovations in broad daylight, bundled into a black car before her security detail could react, a single dropped phone the only sign anything had gone wrong. When Junwoo got the call, something in him went perfectly, terrifyingly still. "Find her," he said to his head of security, voice flat as steel. "I don't care what it costs. I don't care who we have to burn to the ground. Find her tonight." Taemin, to his credit, showed up within the hour, resentment set aside in the face of a threat to the family's name. "This is what happens when—" "If you finish that sentence," Junwoo said without looking at him, "you and I are going to have a very different conversation." He turned back to the map spread across his desk, city blocks marked with the syndicate's known properties. "She is not a liability. She is the only thing in this family worth protecting. Help me get her back, or get out of my way." For the first time in years, Taemin chose to help. They found her by midnight in a warehouse near the docks, held in a bare concrete room, hands bound, chin lifted with a defiance that made even her captors nervous. She hadn't broken. She hadn't cried. She had spent every hour memorizing exits and counting footsteps, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her fear. When the door blew open and Junwoo appeared through the smoke, gun steady in his hand, eyes scanning the room with a violence she had never seen in him before, she felt something break loose in her chest, relief so sharp it was almost pain. "Junwoo, I'm here." He crossed the room in 3 strides, cutting her bindings with hands that shook only once he was certain she was safe. "I'm here. I told you I wouldn't let anyone take what's mine." Outside, the sound of his men securing the building rolled through the walls like distant thunder. He pulled her against his chest and held on like the world might still try to take her, his mouth pressed to her hair, murmuring her name like a prayer he'd been saving his whole life to say. "Take me home," she whispered. "Always," he said. By the following spring, the syndicate that had taken her no longer existed in any form worth mentioning. Junwoo had made certain of that, methodically and without mercy, in the language his world understood best. Taemin, chastened and changed, stood at his side now instead of against him. The Seo family, for the first time in a generation, had a united front. And in a garden behind the family estate, string lights glowing gold against the dusk, Seo Junwoo knelt in front of the woman who had once pressed her hands over his wound in a stairwell and refused to let him die. "I have spent my whole life being feared," he said, ringbox open and trembling slightly in his hand, the only tremble he allowed himself in front of 100 watching guests. "I never once wanted to be loved, because I didn't think it was safe to want. Then you found me bleeding and you didn't run. You've been finding me ever since. In every version of myself, I tried to hide from you. I don't want an empire without you in it. Marry me, Destiny. Let me spend the rest of my life choosing you the way you chose me." She was crying before she managed to say yes. A year later, the same garden held a different kind of celebration. String lights again, laughter again, but this time a small crowd gathered close as Junwoo lifted his sleeping newborn daughter into the evening air. Disbelief and devotion written plain across a face the world had once only ever seen as dangerous. "She has your eyes," Destiny said softly, leaning into his side. "She has your courage," he said. "God help every man who ever underestimates her." Below them, the city he ruled glittered on, unaware that the most feared man in it had built his entire empire, in the end, around the quiet strength of one woman who had simply refused to walk away. If you love the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Afro Korea TV for more.